Welcome to Job Bridges Japanese Language Training Center. We provide an online tutorial for people who aspires to work in Japan. Before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to keep you updated on our lessons to help you master Japanese language in no time. Konnichiwa minasan, welcome back to Job Bridges Japanese Language video tutorial. And in this video, we'll be discussing about lesson 37. And in here, we'll be talking about passive voices of verbs. So, let's start. Now again, passive verbs. So how do we translate or transform verbs into their passive forms? Now, you have to listen to this very carefully. Okay. Again, we divided the verbs into its three groups. Group 1, which has E sounds before the mass. The group 2, which has the E sounds before the mass. And of course, the group 3, wherein we added shimasu to the noun to make it a verb, and then it includes also to come or the kimasu. Now, to transform these verbs into passive forms for group 1, okay, change the E sound before the mass to ka, and then add remas for the polite form. Again, passive verbs in the polite form for the group 1 verb. Change the E sound before the mass into ka or a sounds, and then add remas. So, kakimas to write, the passive form is kakaremas. We change the E or the ki into ka, and then add remas, kakaremas. Again, kakaremas. Now, for the plain form, the same thing applies, but instead of adding remas, we add reru, kakareru. So, kakimas will become kakaremas for the polite form, and the plain form will be kakareru. Just change the E sound into its a counterpart, then add remas for the polite form, and then reru for the plain form. Now next, group 2. This is the easiest one, remember? So you just have to remove the mas and then add raremas to the polite form. So homemas, to be praised, will become homeraremas. Again, just remove the mas, then add raremas to make it a polite form of the passive verb, homeraremas. Now, to make it a plain form, it's as easy as removing the mas again from the homemas, then add rareru. So, homerareru. Again, for the group 2, remove the mas, add rareru, raremas for the polite form, and rareru for the plain form. So, homemas will become homeraremas for the polite form, and homerareru as the plain form. So, same thing with tabemas, to eat. So, the polite form will be taberaremas, and then the plain form is taberareru. Now, group 3. Let's start off with the kimasu, as it is always the one who is getting the special attention, right? So, kimasu automatically becomes koraremas as its polite form, and korareru for the plain form. Now, for other verbs that are under the group 3, wherein we just add the shimasu. So, shimasu as the polite form will be saremas, and the plain form, sareru. Again, shimasu will become saremas, and for the polite form, and for the plain form is sareru. So, for example, we have benkyo shimasu. The passive form or the passive verb in the polite form will become benkyo saremasu, and then its plain form will become benkyo sareru. Got that? Now remember, all passive verbs are group 2 verbs. Okay? They conjugate into the dictionary form nai form and the te form. Again, all passive verbs, okay? All verbs when transformed into passive verbs are group 2 verbs. Right? If you notice, they all ended with or end with re, and so on. So, you're going to make them into or transform them into their nai form. Kakarimasu will become kakarenai, and then kakarete. And same thing with homerarimasu, homerarenai, homerarete, and so on. So there, kakareru, kakarenai, kakarete. Got na? Once the verb transforms into its passive form, may it be in group 1, 2, or 3, okay, they conjugate into the dictionary form just like how any group 2 verbs does. Okay? Now, don't you just wish that all verbs are into passive so you could just translate it easily into its nai or te form, right? Okay, now let's start using passive verbs. Or why do we have to transform verbs into its passive form, right? What are the uses? So, let me teach you first the sentence pattern. N1, which is a person, 1. Wa, N2, which of course is a person 2. Ni, then verb in its passive form. Again, noun 1, which is a person 1 or the person 1, wa. Noun 2, which is a person 2 or the second person that will be mentioned in the sentence, ni, and then the verb in its passive form. So what is this used for? When a person, which is the person 2, action, or when the person's action, which is the person 2, is directed to another person, which is the person 1, okay, the person 1 can state it from his or her side by using the sentence pattern. Again, the person 2 or the person 2, okay, the person 2's action is directed to the person 1, but then it is the person 1 who is stating this sentence pattern. So in this case, person 1 becomes the topic of the sentence, and person 2 is marked with me, and a passive verb is used. Okay. Again, person 2 is the one doing the action, but then the person 1 is the one stating the sentence. Example. Sensei wa watashi o homemashita. So this is how we usually construct the sentence, right? Using the verbs that we know. Okay, again, sensei wa watashi o homemashita. My teacher praised me. So let's start using or transforming this sentence or saying this sentence in a passive voice. Watashi wa sensei ni homeraremashita. I was praised by my teacher. So in the first sentence, sensei has the particle wa, which denotes that the sensei is the subject. But then in the passive voice, the watashi or the speaker is the subject. That's why watashi wa sensei ni homeraremashita. No, it is in his or her own point of view, making him or her as the topic by using the particle wa to watashi, of course. And then, of course, again, the giver of the action is the person to which is the sensei in this sentence. Again, okay, the sensei, okay, is the action giver, wherein the action is directed to the person 1, which is the watashi. And then, of course, the action is the homeraremashita or being praised to. Okay? Watashi wa sensei ni homeraremashita. I was praised by my teacher. Now, let's compare again the usual sentence that we have into or compared to the passive voice sentences. Example, we usually say, Haha wa watashi ni kaimono o tanomimashita. Haha wa watashi ni kaimono o tanomimashita. My mother asked me to go shopping. Now, how do we say this in a passive voice? Watashi wa haha ni kaimono o tanomaremashita. Or I was asked to go shopping by my mother. Now, I know that this sentence has the same meaning. It's just that the second one, the one wherein we use the passive first, this is, or we use this as a passive voice wherein the action is directed towards the speaker and it is the speaker who is stating the sentence. So in this one, the second one, the subject is the speaker and the action done by the mother is being directed to the speaker. Wakarimashita. Now, when something that moves, example, a car, an animal, can replace the person to in this sentence pattern also. It's not always, the noun to may or may not be always a person. It can be anything that moves. Example, Watashi wa inu ni kamaremashita. I was bitten by a dog. So the action done by the dog, which is biting, is done to the speaker, which is the N1. So in this one, or in this sentence pattern, watashi, N1, wa, inu, N2, ni, and then the verb in its passive form, kamaremashita. I was bitten by a dog. Now, I have here another sentence pattern using the verb in its passive form. So, here we have noun 1, which is a person 1, wa, noun 2, which is the person 2, me, and then the noun 3 here is the object of the passive verb, and then particle o, verb passive form. Again, noun 1, which is the person 1, wa. Noun 2, which is the person 2, me. Noun 3, which is the object of the verb. That's why we use the particle o and then the verb in its passive form. When a person or person 2's action is directed to an object belonging to another person, which is the person 1, and that person feels annoyed or troubled, person 1 uses this sentence pattern to express his or her feelings. Again, we use this sentence pattern when we are talking about the person 2 whose action, made us feel annoyed, troubled, or troubled. Again, the person 2 did something, alright, did an action towards the noun 3, which is or which belongs to the person 1 or our N1, and then the noun 1 felt annoyed or troubled by that action. Example, Ototo ga watashi no pasokon o kawashimashita. That's how we would say that, right? My brother broke my personal computer. Ototo ga watashi no pasokon o kawashimashita. In the sentence, the speaker is just stating that his brother broke his or her personal computer. That's just it. Plain and simple, stating what happened. But then, when that person, alright, that person 1 felt troubled or annoyed by his brother breaking his personal computer, we have to use, or we will use this sentence pattern, wherein we say, Watashi wa ototo ni pasokon o kawasaremashita. Again, Watashi wa ototo ni pasokon o kawasaremashita. I had my personal computer broken by my brother. Now, when you use the sentence pattern, this clearly states that you are annoyed or troubled by what happened. By what the person 2 or the N2 did to the N3, which is the pasokon, that belongs to the N1 or the person 1. Got that? Again, the sentence pattern, the topic of the sentence is not the object or not the N3 of the verb, but the person 1, the watashi or the N1, who felt annoyed or troubled by what the person 2 thus to the object belonging to him or her. Thus, watashi no pasokon wa ototo ni kuwasarimashita is not correct. You should always use the sentence, okay, that I have shown you, which is watashi wa ototo ni pasokon no kuwasarimashita. I had my personal computer broken by my brother, stating annoyance. Of course, who wouldn't be annoyed when someone broke your personal computer? I myself would feel the exact same thing. Now, other examples for this sentence pattern, make it clearer to you. Okay. So again, like in the sentence pattern 2 or the former one, an animate object or something that moves can also replace the person too. So, watashi wa inu ni te o kamaremashita. Again, watashi wa inu ni te o kamaremashita. Or, I had my hand bitten by a dog. No, who wouldn't be troubled when your hand has been bitten by a dog? So, in the sentence pattern, the N1 is the watashi, then the N2, or the doer of the action that troubled or causes annoyance to the N1 is the inu or the N2. Then ni. Then the object that the inu did something to is your hand or the hand, which is the te, then o, then the passive verb kamaremashita. Watashi wa inu ni te o kamaremashita. I had my hand bitten by a dog. So, as this sentence pattern is used when the person 1 is troubled by what the person 2 does, it cannot be used when person 1 is grateful for what the person 2 does. Again, the sentence pattern is used when only you felt troubled or annoyed by the action. But then, if you are grateful or thankful for what the person 2 did to you, you cannot use this sentence pattern. Instead, we use the te moraimasu. Again, we use the te moraimasu. When you feel grateful, we use the sentence pattern. Watashi wa tomodachi ni jitensha o shuri shite moraimashita. I had my bicycle repaired by my friend. Expressing gratitude or gratefulness. Okay? Do not use the passive form, as it would sound like you are annoyed even if your friend helped you or repaired your bicycle. Again, when you feel troubled or annoyed by other person or a dog or a car's action, you use the passive form. But then if you felt grateful and thankful, we use the te moraimashita instead. Remember that. Do not, ever do not, I repeat, do not, okay, use the passive form when you are grateful, as it might come like you are an ungrateful person because they are or they already helped you, but then it still made you feel annoyed. We don't want that, right? Okay. Now, next. Okay. Again, do not say watashi wa tomodachi ni jitensha o shuri saremashita. This is very wrong. Okay. I'm sorry for being repetitive, but I just want this to be marked to you. Okay, I want you to remember this, because this is very troublesome if you get confused or if you get this sentence pattern confused. Okay. Now, we have here a noun, which is a thing, and then you could use either ga or wa, then the verb in its passive form. Again, a noun, which is a thing, ga or wa, and then verb, passive form. Now, when you need to mention the person, or when you need not mention the person who does the action denoted by a verb, you can make the object of the verb the subject of the sentence. Again, you can make the object of the verb the subject of the sentence. So instead of using noun or verb passive, because we don't want to mention the person anymore and we want to make that object the subject of our sentence, okay, we use the ga or wa. So in this case, a passive verb is used. For example, France de mukashi no Nihon no eiga hakken sarimashita. An old Japanese picture has been discovered in France. So in this sentence pattern, we did not mention who discovered that old picture or old Japanese picture in France. That's why we use the object as the subject in the sentence. France de mukashi no Nihon no e ga hakken sarimashita. Other examples. Nihon no kuruma wa sekai juu e yushutsu sarete imasu. Japanese cars are exported all over the world. We did not mention who exports what, alright? But we just said that the cars or the Japanese cars, Nihon no kuruma, is the thing here or the noun, wa sekai juu e yushutsu sarete imasu. Japanese cars are exported all over the world. No persons or no people, no person is being mentioned. That's why we use the item or the thing as the subject. And also another one, kaigi wa Kobe de akaremashita, or the assembly was held in Kobe. Okay. Now when something is created or discovered, when something is created or discovered and it is stated using a passive verb, the person who created or discovered it is indicated by ni, yotte, instead of ni. Verbs like kakimasu, hatsumei shimasu, and hakken shimasu are used in this sentence pattern. So what is that sentence pattern? It's the N1 wa, N2 person ni, yotte, verb passive. Again, N1 wa, N2 which is a person, ni yotte, verb passive. Okay? It is when someone or something discovered or invented something, okay, we use this sentence pattern. Example. Kenji monogatari wa Murasaki Shikibu ni yotte kakaremashita. Again, Genji monogatari wa Murasaki Shikibu ni yotte kakaremashita. Or the tale of Genji was written by Murasaki Shikibu. So in this sentence pattern, we state that Genji Murasaki is the writer of the tale of Genji. Now this is very familiar. Denwa wa bero ni yotte hatsumei sarimashita. The telephone was invented by Bell. Of course, that Bell is Alexander Graham Bell, right? Now last, noun kara or noun de tsukurimasu. Noun kara or noun de tsukurimasu. When something is made from a raw material, the material is marked with kara. But when it is obvious to the eye that something is made of a particular material, the material is marked with de. Again, when something is made from a raw material, okay, and we cannot actually identify what that material is by looking at that product, we use or it is marked by kara. But when it is obvious to the eye that something is made from a particular material, the material is marked with de. Example, biru wa mugi kara tsukuraremasu. Again, biru wa mugi kara tsukuraremasu. Or beer is made from barley. Now, by just looking at a beer, you cannot say or you cannot identify that it's made from barley. That's why we use kara with the material or the raw material, which is barley. But when you want to say mukashi nihon no ie wa ki de tsukuraremashita, or Japanese houses are made of wood in the past, we use de because when something is obviously made out of a certain material, wherein in this sentence pattern it is wood, okay, we use de. When you can say that it is obviously made from something, we use de. But when can you not actually, or it isn't obvious to the naked eye that is made from something, we use kara. Wakarimashita minasan? Wakatta ne.
Alright, that's just it for today. See you on our next videos. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to keep you updated on our lessons so you can master Japanese language in no time.